Brandon,
What's up?
my friend, it's good to see you, dude.
Good to see you too. How's it
Hell
going?
yeah. I'm doing pretty good, trying not to get too crazy, just having some fun talking to my friends on the internet like this. How about yourself?
Very cool. I've been keeping busy. I work at a recording studio. I've been doing some tech work.
Cool.
Haven't really been getting clients in.
Mm,
Um, been working on writing music.
mm.
That's been cool. A little bit of downtime for that. And otherwise, just hanging in there, trying to stay safe, trying to stay healthy.
Nice, man. So working at the recording studio for the uninitiated, tell us a little bit about your strengths, the things you're involved in.
Hmm. Well, our recording studio has a lot of old vintage analog gear. That's
Cool.
kind of my forte.
Nice.
Working with tape machines, calibrating tape machines, working with old consoles. I do a lot of wiring in the studio. Um, we have a bunch of very cool vintage processing like compressors, equalizers, reverbs, microphones, and then instruments too. We got pianos, guitars, amplifiers, effects pedals. So using a lot of analog gear to make live music, basically.
Hell yeah, man.
So using the computer more as just like an editing device and a
Mm.
storage device. But we're using a lot of analog tape, which has been very cool, and just getting like vibey tones going for
Cool.
aesthetic and we're just trying to make some cool music out of there, some cool art. So that's our thing.
Nice, man. When you say wiring work, are you talking about like getting deep inside of consoles and things or cables
Hmm.
connecting consoles or so like are you talking about
All of
like
the above, yeah.
repair and like all the
Yeah,
way down to
some repair work. I don't work as much on circuits like circuit boards and that sort of thing,
uh-huh.
although I'm starting to get into that a little bit
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
But signal flow in the studio.
Mm.
So from so you've got the microphone, you plug it into a cable, but you're in a different room than maybe the control room, right? So then it's going to go into the snake. The snake carries the signal all the way to the patch bay. From the patch bay, then it's going to go into all of the other devices that are hooked up to the patch bay,
Mm.
including the computer, tape machines, effects processing, all of that signal flow, that matrix. I've done all the wiring for in our studio,
Oh wow.
as well as the wiring of the console that we have. We have this vintage 60s console. And when we got it, it was just wires coming off of it. We didn't know where the wires went. Like, we knew that there were the inputs and the outputs, but who knows which one's what and that.
Mm.
So we went through and we found all the points on that console, which there's like, let's say, I don't know, but let's say like 100
Mm-hmm.
points, like 50 inputs and, points in between on the console that aren't leaving, and then like 25 outputs, something like
Wow.
that. And then I did all of that wiring as well. So then that goes to the patch bay, so you can get in and out of it at any point, basically in the console. So
Damn. How long
that
does
was
a
like that was like 2 weeks of wiring.
wow.
So that's sitting there with a soldering iron,
Yeah.
sitting there with a multimeter, testing points, seeing where the signal's going.
Yeah.
Oh, this connects to that one, beep beep. This one connects to that one, beep beep. Or like searching and figuring all that out. So
Yeah. Is this pretty enjoyable work for you or
yeah, I
hell
I,
yeah.
I love it. I love that it's a good balance of that side, the technical side, as
Mm-hmm.
well as working with artists and making music.
Mm.
So when we're between projects, I'm working on upkeeping the studio like I am now. Um, and then we'll get clients straight for like 2 months here and there,
Mm.
or like a week here, a week there.
Mm.
So
That's wild. Are a lot of pieces of gear like, I imagine there's a certain amount of upkeep because everything's analog. So you're getting in there and you're repairing things and
Hmm.
yeah,
And if it's beyond me, we have a number of techs that are good at different specific jobs.
cool.
So if
Nice,
we have
man.
an amplifier that goes, we send it out to a guy. If we have like the tape machine that has components that are going bad, we'll send out a piece of it to a guy and
Mhm.
have him fix it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice, man. Tell me about like your initial experiences with like vintage analog gear and how is
Hmm.
that claimed such a soft spot in your heart?
Well, when I first got into recording in that, I had an M-Box, I had a couple of microphones, laptop.
Yeah.
Didn't really think much about like recording consoles in full scale studios because I didn't have the opportunity to be in those spaces really.
Mm.
Um, but I studied recording, basically music technology
Hmm.
at NYU, and in that time, I started to get used to using synthesizers and using recording consoles and patch bays because we had little studios at the school that we could use, you know.
Nice.
And then I think it was my junior year we had to start doing an internship. So you could do an internship in a number of things. You could work at like a radio station. You could work servicing things. You could, you know, there were a lot. My program was very like rounded, you know, like it wasn't very specific, but you learned a lot about music and technology,
Yeah.
basically. And I had an opportunity to work at this recording studio called Trout Recording in Park Slope in Brooklyn. And they were working with some of my favorite artists around that time. They were working with Akron Family,
Cool.
and they did some Pavement records
Nice.
like a little earlier. Um, they were working with this badass Joan as Policewoman, this female artist, New York based, and I was really excited to get in over there, and they accepted me, and that studio was very niche
Mm.
analog recording and
Mm.
mixing. So I learned how to bias tape machines. I learned how to wire stuff up. They did all their wiring themselves, as
Wow.
well as like air conditioning and power
Oh,
and
dang.
all that sort of stuff.
And the
So
lawnmower out front.
yeah, they
Everything.
knew how to do all that stuff, and I learned how to do a lot of that stuff. So
Cool.
um, that experience, in one hand, there were like three people working there, and then me as an intern, and I knew that was the type of recording environment that I liked, rather than like a big, like sometimes like high-end recording studios can have this kind of like a sterile type of
Mm.
feel to them, you know. Everything's like I don't know, like maybe too pristine, too clean. It's like
Yeah.
I don't know, that type of environment kind of makes me personally nervous. So especially when working on art and music, like I want to feel comfortable, I want to feel kind of at home, you know.
Yeah.
That studio had that, and then just vibe, like the recordings had such warmth.
Yeah.
Even if somebody brought in a project that was recorded at their home studio and we
Mm.
would mix it, on the other end of that, but the final product was always so warm and natural sounding, and that's when I really got an aesthetic appreciation for analog gear and analog recording, and quality electronics, like
Yeah, man.
the preamp designs, and that a lot of those go back to the 30s and 40s. These guys were like serious electrical engineers designing these things,
Mm.
um, and they're well built and they sound incredible.
Hell yeah. Yeah, man. I've only ever recorded on my laptop. Well, that's not true actually. I have been into some recording studios with friends, like like yourself, like a situation where like a friend, well, I guess this is how you used to be, not how you currently are, but like a friend who was like interning at a studio get in there and record some stuff. But yeah, man, I'm interested in really like learning to hear the difference between the analog stuff and the digital stuff. What are some records that you would point me towards to like really check out that analog warmth?
Well, anything before 1993
Yeah.
was recorded to analog tape.
Yeah.
So you got a lot of quality recordings and some really vibey stuff in there. Even if it's not
Cool.
necessarily big sounding, there's an organic element to it.
Mm.
Um, like I love the Mamas and the Papas records, for
Yeah.
instance.
Yeah, man.
Obviously the Beatles stuff. I really like Moody Blues recordings.
Mm.
I mean, there's a lot out there from the old stuff.
Totally.
From the newer stuff, I'm trying to think. You know, it's hard to tell sometimes if who's recording digital and who's recording analog. And a lot of times people are what might record digital and then like dump it down to tape for warmth.
Mm.
And then you also have a lot of plugins now that are trying to emulate a lot of analog gear.
Yeah.
So it's hard to tell within that process, like necessarily how it was done.
Mm.
But I know Tool records analog. There are a lot of albums now that are like hybrid, like
Yeah.
somewhat recorded to tape, and then some tracks are not.
Yeah.
Like I know the Joanna Newsom stuff is like that.
Mm.
Devendra Banhart is a pretty good example of full analog recording. Are you familiar with his stuff?
Not at all.
Oh, he's like a local LA. They call his genre like freak folk, but he's a folk kind of I don't know, free spirit
Yeah.
dude. He's super talented, and he has records that are as lo-fi as like just the whole thing done on a 4-track tape recorder. So you just
Yeah.
have 4 tracks the whole time.
Yeah.
And then he's done like full productions with like, you know, piano, live strings, drums, all of that stuff.
Cool, man.
Um,
Nice. What is it?
Yeah.
What does it mean to bias a tape machine?
to bias a tape machine.
Yeah. You were saying that's one of your responsibilities at the recording studio.
Yeah. So basically, it's setting all of the levels so that they're at 0 across the frequency spectrum.
Okay, cool.
So there's the level that goes into the tape machine, the level that comes off of the playback head, and then there's basically the equalization of it. So the low end and the high end is balanced and all of that. If your tape machine isn't calibrated, it can sound like a turd, like just complete crap. And if it's calibrated like to a T, then it's going to sound incredible. It's going to have plenty of headroom. It's going to have warmth. So
how do you go about setting? Is there like a specific tool that you have to like set everything? I get, like in my mind, like 0 it would be this arbitrary place.
it is. You know how like,
or is it scientific?
no, it's as arbitrary as 0 is like in the digital world. Like you have basically like, or as arbitrary as the level of music itself. Like you could put a record out that's like pretty quiet, but then when you play it against another record, you're going to be like, whoa, it's like so quiet compared to this other record, you know? The other record's just made louder, but you're only going to get to a certain point of loudness before you're peaking, right?
Yeah.
So at some point they came up with the standards of what 0 was going to be. And in the analog realm, +4 dB is 0, and in the digital world, -18 dB is 0. But you could calibrate your studio to -20 dB. But as long as you're consistent, then you know like where you're at all the time. You know, if all your gear is calibrated to one set standard, then you're in the clear basically. But with a tape machine, you might take that tape and somebody else plays it on their tape machine. So you have to make sure that their levels are the same. Otherwise, it's
Mm,
going to be peaking, or it's going to
mm.
be like not loud enough, and there's going to be too much tape hiss in the signal. So
Interesting.
you find this like Goldilocks zone of basically like the tape is made of this material, and that material wants to see a specific level to get a good ratio of sound without distortion. And when it gets, but then if it gets too quiet, then you're gonna have too much tape hiss. So you just
Mm.
want to be in that zone. They have, so this is my MRL tape for my tape machine,
Cool.
and this is basically like industry calibration. Um,
Oh,
yeah. So
interesting, man.
so you put this and you play it back on the tape machine,
Yeah.
and then you know that at 1K, the signal that should be hitting 0 on your meters here.
Mm.
So you play it back, and you're in repro here. You put that at 0, and then you do the frequencies, high frequency and low frequency.
Hey.
Then now you know that you're playing back at the right levels. So then you go back and you calibrate the input of the tape machine. So then now you know what's going in, what's coming out is already calibrated to 0. So now you can test what going in is going to be. So
Mm.
that's how you do it.
Wow. That's amazing. So, are you telling me, let's see if I understand this a little bit. If I plug my guitar into something that's analog and it is biased or calibrated to 0, that piece of analog equipment is going to add 4 dB of volume to my guitar signal?
No, if that machine is calibrated properly, it should add no gain to your guitar signal.
So, what does it mean when you said that the industry standard is +4 for analog?
Basically, 0 is like 0 is, I think, lower. I don't know. They came up with this
You're
like 0 at some point, right?
Yeah,
What 0 dB is as a level,
cool.
and +4 from that is like an ideal to run equipment at. I think
Interesting.
that's basically how it happens. But dependent on what tape machine you have,
Uh,
your 0 might be at a different level. So
mm.
you have to know, like, you have to buy the right MRL tape. Like that MRL tape is for my tape machine. And my tape machine's at +3. So
Oh, interesting.
that's not relative. The +4, I think, is like a current modern, like, good level. It's
Interesting.
just like the what our digital 0 is comes out as +4 in the analog realm.
Oh, so it's like a relationship between digital to analog?
There's, yeah, but it
Interesting.
was before there was digital as well, like just old analog equipment.
Hmm.
Like this machine is like 19, I don't know what year this is, like 71 or
Cool.
72. And and like I said, that's +3.
Yeah.
So that's 0 to that machine, you know.
Interesting. Cool, man. Yeah, I'm sorry to get so specific on this stuff. I'm just trying to understand
Yeah,
it
I don't
myself.
really know like who decided what these numbers are and that, so
Yeah, it's
that's
interesting.
just I understand the relationship between them.
Yeah, it almost reminds me of how like equal temperament, like we decided that we're gonna tune everything to like A440, and we just decided that like
Yeah,
that was A. It almost it seems like a similar kind of system.
it's very similar.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
Wild,
just they
man.
had to decide they had to decide in time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, if you don't mind me asking more specific questions about
Let's
the
do it.
recording process and gear,
Let's do it.
um, The
Hopefully, I have the answers.
I'm sure you do. You know much more about this than I do. But the the word tape machine. I've heard that word used to describe these like huge things that look like they do tons of things. And then I've also heard that word used to describe like a little like 4-track recorder that records to like a little cassette tape.
Hmm.
So I'm curious like the word tape machine, like what does that really mean? What can I expect like a tape machine to be able to do?
Well, you're right. All of those are tape machines. any 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 recording and playback device that takes tape is going to be a tape machine,
Okay.
but that can vary extremely. That
Mm,
can vary from like a 2-track, a 2-inch 24-track tape machine,
mm,
which is going to be huge.
yeah.
24 tracks of electronics are going into this thing. The tape is 2 inches wide.
Mm,
The head stack on that thing is 2 inches wide. Um, and somebody's got to calibrate all 24 channels on that thing. That's like pretty much as big as they get.
mm,
And then you could have just a 2-track little portable, battery powered tape recorder that's, or one channel, it's just a mono tape recorder, and you plug a microphone into it
mm,
and it records and it plays back. But they have all the same elements in them,
mm,
which is a motor that runs the reels so that the tape goes across, whether it's in a cartridge like a cassette tape. Inside that cartridge is just the same mechanism here.
mm,
It's spools with tape on them going across tape heads.
mm,
So this is just a really fancy version of like a cassette deck, basically,
mm.
or a little Porta, like those 4-track Tascam cassette recorders. Those things are cool. You're just recording like 4 tracks down to a cassette deck, like, and it's a tape machine. That thing I
Wow.
don't think you can calibrate though,
Hmm.
as far as I know. I don't know.
It's just it is what it is out of the box.
Yeah. So even like you could have like a little Walkman with a recording button on it and a microphone input, and you're recording to tape.
Hey,
It's
there
a
it
tape
is.
recorder.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Cool, man. Thanks for clearing that up for me. With the with all the roles that you find in the studio between like producer, studio manager, engineer, tech, mixing engineer, mastering engineer, all this stuff. What are the roles that you find yourself gravitating to most?
I really like recording music
Cool.
as a recording engineer,
Nice.
and that would leave out the production element.
Yeah.
I like to work with someone else who would be the producer,
Hmm.
and to work with an artist or the band. So I'm kind of this in between guy that's running the equipment, setting up mics, making sure everything sounds really good.
Cool.
And then the producer might say, hey, but we want this to sound lo-fi, or we want this to sound like distant. And then, I make the choices of setting up different mics in different places to get a different
Hmm.
sound. But I really like recording high fidelity. Just like, it's fun to get like a great sound out of an instrument,
Hmm.
like an acoustic guitar, or a piano. Like, that's really satisfying to me, to put like 2 mics on a piano
Hmm.
and set them up in the right place, and to go through the right signal chain of equipment, which might just be a preamp,
Yeah.
and then for that to sound like heavenly,
Yeah.
or huge,
Yeah.
or as realistic as if you're sitting there,
Hmm.
depending. Sometimes with recordings, you want it to sound realistic, like it's a performance, and you're there in the room. And sometimes you want to create something that is otherworldly, or, I think of it like painting in a lot of ways. Like,
Hmm.
you could paint a picture that looks exactly like a mountain or a tree, or you could paint a picture that gives a certain feeling. And music's the same way. Recording is the same way. Songwriting is perhaps more important, but once you have that song, it's like, where do you want that song to live aesthetically? How do you want that song to be captured? And that's the recording element of it. You know, I've played in bands and I love performing live, and I love that whole thing as well. But making a record is like slightly different, slightly more permanent art form, you know. But it still takes all the same writing and everything that goes into live performance. It's just trying to capture those songs in a way where it's going to live and, you know, portray the songwriting as good as it can and portray the feeling and the emotion.
Hell yeah, man.
So there's that element, which is like capturing those sounds, but then there's capturing the performance. And that is, you know, more important even. You know, that the singer is on and is feeling it and is in that headspace. So you got all these different parameters that go into making a good record. And yeah, so I love that.
Hell yeah, man. What are like some of the characteristics that make a great recording engineer?
Recording engineer?
Yeah.
Attention to detail.
Cool.
It's important to be able to make decisions on the fly. Like, this sounds good or this doesn't sound good. It's important to be able to stay objective throughout the process. Because once you start getting too deep into it, it's hard to tell what's what, you know? You're just completely immersed in it, and it gets hard to tell. It's like, yeah, let's just get the acoustic guitar down. But no, let's get that acoustic guitar down and let's get it to sound good, but let's not pressure the musician too much. You know, we don't want to stall where the musician might lose their inspiration. And so there's this balance of like efficiency and like efficiency and attention to detail. So that's really important. And I think, you know, engineering is in the description, right? Recording engineer. So you've got to understand signal flow, and you've got to understand enough about how microphones work, and how preamps work, and gain stages and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I've worked alongside engineers that like don't understand like the gain stage of a preamplifier, or that they don't want to like touch things and mess with knobs, and it's like because they're afraid they're gonna like make it sound worse. But you can't be afraid to try and make something sound better.
Totally.
You know, and but the more you do it, the more confident you get, and the more you know that something is going to sound good, that this microphone with that instrument is going to work right, you know, that sort of thing.
Hell yeah.
So it's, once you know the basics, it's about trusting your instinct, being able to be objective throughout the process, and then putting in the hours of experience, like any skill set.
Cool, man. How do you prepare for sessions? Do you find yourself like checking out like the artist's previous work, or are there like specific questions that you try to ask the artist?
I try not to a certain extent.
Okay.
But I do love to have an idea of what's going on in the session. A lot of times we have sessions where an artist doesn't really tell us exactly what we're going to be capturing. So they come in and it's like, oh, okay, I got to set up drums, and we got to set up the microphones, and that all takes time. I would love to know ahead of time, you know, oh, we're going to do drums. We're going to use your drums that you have in the studio. Set us up a kit. Okay, great. I can do that. And then we'd be ready to go. But if we're making an album with an artist, there's an element of pre-production for sure
Mm.
involved, and that that basically gets everybody on the same page in terms of like what the game plan is, you know.
Mm.
Because like I said, efficiency is huge, especially if you're spending money in the studio.
Yeah.
But also, you don't want to feel pressured while you're trying to make your art, you know.
Totally, man.
So there's this element of like being prepared, but not being like too prepared, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Being able to like pivot. If you set something up, like exactly like what you were saying, if you set something up and you need to move the mic, or if you need to turn a knob and not being afraid to make it sound any worse. I know exactly what you mean when you say that too. Like there have been so many times where I've been like mixing something and I'm like, oh, I don't want to touch the preset on the compressor because I might screw it up. Yeah,
Yeah, dig in, you know.
exactly, exactly.
Worst thing you could do is lose your sound, and hopefully you've documented it. Or
Yeah.
I'm like really a stickler with documentation as well.
Mm. What do
So
you mean by that?
like for instance, if you found a sweet spot on a compressor for a song, making either a really strong mental note of where that is before moving it, or taking a photograph. I
Mm.
photograph gear all the time.
Mm.
We just worked on this record. It was a really interesting record where it was made all on a boat with found sounds while he was on a boat up in the Arctic. I think he was up in the Arctic. I don't really know.
Cool.
But it was somewhere it sounded like it's like Scandinavia or
Mm.
something. And he had already mixed the thing, and he was basically like, I want you guys to like fuck it up and make it like more analog and make it sound cool. Like use your instinct and try and make this sound cool. So there were 11 tracks on the record, and we processed each one of them differently
Mm.
through like analog delay or EQ, through filtering. All of it went through our Ampex tape machine, and some of it we put through little, like we were talking about those little tape recorders.
Mm-hmm.
We put some of the audio through like little 60s tape recorders that are like this big, that like, who knows like what the history of this thing is. Like,
Yeah.
you know, recording somebody who's now like maybe 70 years old when they were like 10 or learning piano, you know, like
Yeah.
recordings like that were done on these machines, like little home recorders for
Yeah.
in that era. Recording to those, recording,
Cool.
sending it through amplifiers, like re-amplifying
Yeah.
it, miking
Yeah.
the amps, things like that. Every single thing we did, I documented
Mm.
in case I have to redo it or we want to make a change a little bit here, a little bit there. Same with when I like mic up anything for a recording session.
Mm.
The drums, completely documented every session I do.
Mm.
Acoustic guitar. Because what if I make something, like I get a sound that is like magic?
Mm.
Then I'm going to be like, man, how did I get that sound?
Mm.
I'm going to want to get that sound every time, you know?
Is there a way to document like the tuning of drums?
No. Well, I mean, I guess you could have somebody hit each one. And if you have a
Oh, and
picture of
then
what the
send it.
drum is, then you could tune it back to that.
Huh. Interesting, man.
But that's like,
That's cool.
I think I'm not very good at tuning drums. I leave
I
that
agree.
to the drummer usually.
Yeah.
But I imagine that takes a lot of like intuition, you know?
Dude, drum tuning, it's very elusive. I feel the same way about compressors. I just like I'm learning how to hear all these things. 'Cause it's also like, I don't know, I've played with drummers that like to tune to a frequency and or more so a frequency, and then I've played with drummers that more so tune to a vibe, and it's interesting. There's like different schools of thought on all this stuff.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah, because you could be playing, if you play like, I guess a drummer, like for a live show, really he's tuning the drums for that entire performance.
Yeah.
But a lot of times in the studio, we're tuning drums per song, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
because it's like, well, you've got to be, you don't want to be, well, I mean, if it sounds great and you want the same sound on every song, then you can go with that and there'd be continuity in that.
Yeah.
But I think there is an element of like dialing in the sound per song. You know, the song keys are going to be different, tempos are going to be different. You might want the drum to ring out a little bit longer. It's a slower song, things like that. You know.
Yeah, man. I totally agree. Drummers are, man, fucking love drummers. I always joke that if I had $300 to buy a band, I would spend $300 on the drummer. It's just like it's like the most important thing for me. At least playing live. It's just like the drums, like they have to be there.
Yeah.
Like the singer can suck. Like the front man, whatever, like whatever. But the drums, when drums are bad, it's never good, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
Yeah, man. Do you want to talk about this EP you just put out, dude?
Sure. Let's
Hell
talk.
yeah. So you're in a band.
Well, LA River Bend, we stopped performing November last year.
Okay.
Well, a year and a half ago.
All right.
Yes.
I hear you.
So end of 2018 was our last performance as a band.
So it's now LA River Bended. Past tense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Nate and Jacob still play together in a band called Good Run.
Cool.
And then Emily plays with her husband Kenny in
Yeah.
Hope Hall. I've got to look up the name. There's too many
Hope Hall
too many words in it.
Children's Choir, I think.
Yeah, but isn't there a fifth word in there?
There might be a
Hope
fifth
Hall
word.
Chamber Children's Choir?
Chamber Children's Choir. It's something like that.
No, maybe it's just Hope Hall Children's Choir.
I think it's 4 words, but don't hold me to it.
I won't.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Yeah, so they're keeping busy
Cool,
doing that.
man.
But yeah, LA Riverbend, it's been a little while. So
Mm.
our last performance, end of 2018,
Hmm.
and then into 2019, we did this record.
Mm.
And it was basically the songs that hadn't been recorded that we wrote, you know, the last year or so of performing together.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
Nice.
We made it at Moose Cat Recording with Mike Post.
Good old
He
Mike.
engineered it.
Dude, the
Yeah.
drums sound really good on that record.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jacob did a fantastic job
Yeah.
performing and
Yeah.
and Mike did such a good job, you know, recording them.
Yeah.
So
Did Mike also
him and I,
mix it?
yes, he mixed
Cool.
it.
Cool.
We worked together a little bit on the recording.
Cool.
He used like some of my mics, but it was, you know, his space and
Mm.
running his equipment and that.
Yeah.
So I think we made a pretty good team. Came up
Hell
with
yeah,
pretty
man.
pretty good sounding little. It's like in between an EP and an LP, 7 songs. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's that like perfect middle ground. I think you could call it a record and no one would get too mad at you.
yeah,
Yeah, totally. Yeah, man. Yeah, I liked it. I was playing drums along with it earlier today.
oh,
Having some
cool,
fun.
nice.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Yeah, Jacob did such a good job playing on that. um, it's a fun record to make. I love those songs. I miss them dearly.
Mm,
You know, we haven't played them in a long time.
yeah.
We were talking about getting together maybe for a, you know, little release show.
That'd be fun.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that'll happen. Although we
Yeah.
ended up releasing it now when we're in quarantine and can't play together. But
Yeah, I remember shows. I got an email today promoting an animals as leaders show at the Hollywood Palladium in August, and I just laughed. I was like, "That's not gonna happen."
whoa,
Yeah,
no, I don't think so.
yeah. I think I don't know, man. Like the Staples Center, for example, will probably be closed for like a year and a half. Like all like the huge spots.
definitely.
There's no way, man.
Mm-mm.
So,
It's gonna be a while.
yeah. How are you doing with all the Corona stuff? Tell me like your story of how it's been.
Well, there's an element of being paranoid about being sick.
Mm.
Like there were a couple of days where I was like, I don't know, like I had a sore throat and
Mm-hmm.
some congestion. Like I've still got a little bit of like, but it's been like over a week. I've
Mm.
never had a sparked a fever or anything like that.
Yeah.
But there's just this element of like, oh no, maybe I've got it, and then
Mm.
but every time it's like passed and I haven't had those specific symptoms. So
Yeah.
I think I feel like different in this time, like a sense of like constant exhaustion
Mm.
to a certain degree. And then also I'm like more sensitive to caffeine than I have been in the past. So
That's
it's like I'm
very
always
specific.
tired, but then I could get like super hyper on caffeine in
Mm.
like a way like my body wouldn't normally act that way. But
Mm.
I think it's just like an underlying level of stress from all of this,
Yeah, man.
just constantly thinking about it. A low level like anxiety, fear that just is like riding out.
Yeah, man.
But right now it's like I think maybe other people feel the same way, like starting to get used to it a little bit more, feeling like, oh, okay, well, we're just gonna be riding this out for a while. The like immediate threat feels like it's like gone away a little bit. Not like I'm lax. I'm still like wearing the face mask and everything like that. But
Totally.
um, yeah, it's been interesting.
Cool,
But
man.
there have been some elements that I appreciate in all of it.
Mm.
Things are slowing down. Things are pretty slow right now. Giving good old Gaia, Mother Earth, a little bit of a break.
Yeah.
Like I've seen squirrels like crazy on my street. Like nature's waking up a little bit as we just like aren't driving as much and aren't putting such a toll on the earth. So that I love. I love
Yeah.
to see that. And I think there's room for like I was telling Father Time, he was asking me about this when we were on the Couch LA interview, and I feel like it's a time like we're all kind of able to take an objective stance and like reevaluate some things about the way that things have been going and in on Earth. The whole planet
Yeah.
is going through this together. So
Mm.
um, so I'm interested to see what happens on the other side of it. And somewhat hopeful, but I don't know if that's just like blind hope or what. But I don't know. It would be nice to see some changes and to you know be able to slow down a little bit more. I think our pace of life is just like out of control in the modern era.
Yeah, man, especially trying to do the music hustle thing and going to shows. I mean, I've seen you at a ton of shows. I know you're always out hanging out and having a
Oh
good
yeah,
time. So it's like, you wake up early, you work all day, you go out to shows at night. It's a busy life.
it is. It is.
Yeah, I've
Do you?
appreciated.
What do you do? What do you do? You have a day job, or what do you do during the day before you go out to shows?
Totally. I have about well, not anymore. Now it's more like 24. I have about 24 private music students.
Yes, we've talked
Yeah.
about this. I remember at the hi hat we were
Yeah.
talking about this.
Yeah, I'm one of those guys.
That's great,
One of the
man.
music teacher folks.
To be
It
able to do music in any iteration and call that your job and your living and your way of life, I think is incredible.
it's pretty cool. I like it a lot more than like working at Target or something. And the only reason I say that is because I have worked at Target before, so I'm speaking from experience. But
All the Target employees are like, "What he say?"
exactly, yeah. But I hope so. I hope I get some Target employee flack. That'd be nice down in the YouTube comments or something. But it's nice because I can stack them all in like 3 days. So then I have 4 days to like work on other shit,
That's great.
which is really really nice. Yeah, and it's like a meaningful service that I provide. Like a lot of my students really appreciate it. Like I have students that are really young, and I have students that are a lot older than me, and I put on like twice a year performances for my students, and they like earlier today I had a Zoom call with one of my students, and I noticed in her bedroom and her back wall she had taped up the performance programs from the two performances that she's been in.
Cool.
And like that, I don't know, stuff like that really like makes me happy to know that they really appreciate the service that I'm providing.
Totally.
But man, switching over to the online lessons has been a huge pain in the ass.
Uh,
It's been very difficult to acclimate to and adjust to, and I think I'm just about figuring it out. But yeah, that's my that's how I make money. That's how I pay rent and buy my groceries or whatever. And I'm super thankful to be able to have a job.
yeah.
Yeah.
What makes the video so difficult? Just like holding the students' attention, or like getting them to actually see like what fret you're on and that sort of thing, or
A bit of it is that. Um, the largest thing is that I am extremely limited as an instructor in like the
mm,
services that I can provide over the internet, so I can no longer play with them at the same time, which was a huge part of lessons.
yeah,
And like Zoom is really good for having a conversation with someone, but when my students play for me over Zoom, I hear about 60 to 70% of what's going on, um, because a lot of the video applications have like very aggressive algorithms for taking down anything that's not a human voice. Like even if you
correct.
yeah, even if you go into the settings and you alter stuff, it still is just never like a very good sound.
Yeah,
So that's very frustrating. And then I don't know, I can go on and on, blah blah blah. I'll say like three more things, and I'll stop complaining. I have to talk like slower and a little bit louder, so it's like straining on my voice, like physically. So I'll teach for like 5 hours straight or something, and then at the end of the teaching day, I'll be a little more tired than usual. And the way that I used to do lessons is I would largely improvise the lesson while I was in the lesson. Um, which works out for me fine because I've been teaching for a number of years and I'm able to do that. But it's much more difficult to do that over the internet because while I'm like writing something or transcribing something down, I'm no longer holding their attention over the internet. So that means that
yeah,
I've had to prepare for lessons a lot more. And it's a little bit difficult to prepare for lessons because sometimes I'll prepare something that's too difficult, or sometimes I'll prepare something that's not difficult enough, and it's just frustrating. It's better than not having a job, and it's better than them not receiving music lessons at all. But to me, it's in no way comparable to sitting down with someone in the same room and like discussing the finer points of playing music.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I can imagine. I can
yeah,
imagine that'd be difficult,
yeah.
especially
It's funny.
with like younger kids. You know.
Yeah, man. Yeah, about 60 or 70% of my students are kids, and then the rest are older. So I'm thankful to have a fair amount of older students. It's nice too. Like some of my students are in their 70s, So it's like every week I'm spending time with people in multiple different generations, and it kind of gives me this like perspective that I feel like not a lot of different musicians have. Like I feel like a lot of musicians in Los Angeles are usually like hanging out with people their own age.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool. But
Yeah.
um, but yeah, it's the blah blah blah. I'm just re-articulating everything I've already said. The transition to online has been difficult, but I'm slowly figuring it out. Yeah, yeah,
Nice.
yeah. So that's what I do for work, and then I'll be releasing. I put out a record in January, and I'll be releasing a cover in about 2 weeks or so, and then I'm gonna release a couple monthly singles, and I'm trying to decide on like I think I want to make another record, so I'm trying to decide on the kind of record that I want to make. So I have a couple different ideas. So that's like the direction that I'm really trying to go in is being someone who makes records and figuring out a way to support myself doing that. The teaching stuff is definitely like to get by in the meantime.
And the record making is mostly at home at your space?
That's how it's been. Yeah, I've only made that one record, so I don't, I'm definitely still getting used to all of this stuff. But yeah, that was here in the space, which was cool because it was honoring this like year-long project I did last year, and I wrote all of those songs here in this space. So it was cool to like capture those songs in the space that they were written in. It felt kind of like full circle.
Yeah.
And the record has like a bedroom kind of warm kind of vibe to it, so it worked out for that. But I'm definitely not opposed to getting in the recording studio sooner or later.
How many tracks were on that last one?
11, but one of them was straight from one of the Instagram videos because on this one day I wrote this song called Sick Days that was about being sick and not being able to take a sick day. And I was sick while I performed it for Instagram, so I had a really runny nose, and it was a part of the like shtick of the song, so it had to be that performance take.
Yeah.
So it's like
Or you had
10.
to get sick again and then record it.
Yeah, or I had to get sick again. Exactly. So it was like it's ten tracks that I like tracked and reimagined and put some effort into, and then one track that was straight from the Instagram. So 11
Nice.
songs. Yeah.
I remember one of our last interactions was I've got to check out your record when you're done. You were like finishing it up, I think.
Oh hell yeah.
Like we were texting
Yeah.
and I haven't checked it out.
Oh
I'm sorry,
dude, you're
but I
totally
will.
fine. It's totally fine. It's
I will.
basically like just imagine, just close your eyes and imagine a white boy singing sad songs with a guitar, and that's all it is. Now you've heard the record.
So you wrote 365 songs and you picked 11 sad ones and you put them on the and that's what you made a record out of?
Yeah, there's actually three or four of them are actually really happy.
Okay, good.
But you wouldn't, I don't think they're happy to most people. Like they're happy to me. I think maybe when most people hear them, they're like, that's not as sad as the other ones. But I don't know, it's like I'm so close to this stuff because I wrote them. So I
Yeah.
don't really know objectively how happy or sad they are. But yeah, I mean, I'm really proud of it in terms of it just being like a capstone representation of this year-long thing.
For sure.
And then also like I made the record, I tracked it and mixed it in like 9 days or 10 days or something, and it really kicked my ass. So I'm just like I'm proud that it's
That's like a
finished and it
song a day,
exists.
dude. That's impressive.
Yeah,
So you
it was wild. Yeah.
um were you sad that whole year? Is that why so many sad songs or just when you write you tend to channel sadness?
I think it's both. I did experience a fair amount of sadness. I've been seeing a handful of different therapists like off and on for maybe the past 6 years or so to like talk about depressive tendencies that I have, and like some
Mhm.
months it's worse than others. But during my year of songwriting in particular, I had like bouts of what felt like depression for they were just like much deeper and much longer than usual. And I don't know how much of that correlates with the fact that I was trying to write a song every day, or how much of that was just related to other issues, or just no reason at all. But yeah, it was a very sad year, I think. Yeah.
Well, I'm not gonna pry you like
Oh,
a.
you can pry as much as you want.
Well, I'll check out the songs and then.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but there's a lot to be sad about in life, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's funny, man. It's like I get into these I get into these depressive episodes, and it doesn't happen all the time. It'll happen maybe like, well, usually for the past 6 or 7 years, it'll happen like for 3 weeks, 3 or 4 times a year. Like okay, but I get into these states where I just feel like super hollow, and I feel like I'm not inhabiting my body or inhabiting my mind, um, and it'll just like it'll go on like that for weeks, and it's really strange, man. Super strange, but it hasn't happened all year this year, so that's good. That's cool.
That's great. That's
Yeah,
great news.
yeah. But it is funny, it's like you say the word depression, and it's like everybody experiences it so differently and so
Got a train
uniquely.
going by. Can you hear that?
I can, yeah, yeah, yeah. That's all right. It's this is a very casual, impromptu podcast. We're train
Yeah.
friendly over here.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Um,
But yeah, some of the songs contain lyrics that talk about the sadness that I felt, and but some of the songs are pretty happy too, so
cool. Well,
it's all
I'm
good.
excited to check it out.
Nice, man. Yeah, I hope you dig it. Yeah. Yeah. Well, fuck yeah, dude. This has been a cool time.
Absolutely.
I appreciate you sitting down and taking the time to answer all of my very specific tape machine questions.
Anytime, man.
Hell yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us while we have the airwaves?
Hmm. Well, I've been working on some of my own music
Hell
recently,
yeah.
and I
Cool.
hope maybe within a year's time, I don't know how long it's going to take, but I hope to put a record out at some point. I've got
Hell
some
yeah.
complete songs. I've got a lot of song ideas, a lot of pieces,
Cool.
and I have a concept for it, which
Nice.
may or may not be helpful um,
Yeah.
because it starts to limit you from like just free reign writing, to like, oh, I'm trying to write something specific.
Yeah, I hear you.
But um, but I'm excited about it. I've
Mm.
completed some lyrics on old songs. I have an idea of the sonic space for the album, recording wise.
Hell yeah.
And I'll probably be collaborating with a ton of friends, old
Cool.
LA River benders, and you had Shane Graham on here. Probably be
Yeah.
hopefully sending him some stuff
Fuck
to
yeah.
drum on, as well as Jacob. Um, and my buddy Toby. Do you know Toby Bryan?
The name sounds familiar.
He
It doesn't.
he had a band, Kissing in the Hiccups,
Cool.
a couple years ago.
Hmm.
Jacob used to play with him. That's how we met Jacob, actually.
Nice.
Um, and I used to play bass with him from time to time at shows.
Cool.
It was like me, him, and Jacob, and some other people off and on. And he's a great musician, like
Nice.
super free spirited, that I like a lot. So we've been sending ideas back and forth and been before the quarantine, we were getting together and jamming, and so some stuff down the road. I mean, nothing to announce or anything like that,
Yeah.
but you know, keep an eye out. There'll be some material coming out at some point.
Cool, man. Stoked to hear.
Yeah.
Are you gonna sing on it?
Mm-hmm.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
Tight.
Indeed. Yeah, I play
Um,
like folk guitar along because in LA Riverbend I was playing bass and background
mhm.
singing, but
Cool.
also do like folk style finger plucking, and
Yeah.
I play keys enough to play like synthesizer parts and stuff like that. So
Nice, man.
yeah.
Hell yeah. Cool, dude. So the last question I'll ask you is if there was a younger person out there who wanted to be in the position where you're in, where you're working at a dope vintage recording studio in Los Angeles, what advice would you give that person?
I would say there's a lot of things. There's an element of luck to, like, in terms of the people that you meet in that, but it's important to be out and about.
Hmm.
It's important to reach out to people. If there's a place that you like or that you could see yourself working at, don't hesitate to reach out
Hmm.
when the time is right. If you think you're ready to fill that position, even if it's like bigger shoes, maybe a little bit bigger than you think you're ready for, don't hesitate to reach out and see if they're accepting people.
Hell yeah.
But important to do, really. If you're in LA, there's so many studios in LA, so it's important to do the research to see like what type of studio you like, and what studios have the types of clients that you want to be working with, and that sort of thing, to be in the right niche.
Yeah.
um and that's it. Like, take chances and accept jobs and meet people, and reach out and see who needs help.
Hell yeah, man. It's great
Yeah.
advice. Fuck
So
yeah, dude.
yeah.
Cool. So we don't have to sign off the call just yet, but let's sign off of podcast land.
Okay.
Alrighty. Thanks for listening, everybody. This has been Brandon, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Well, I wanna know what it's like to create inside your mind. Tell me every little thing you do. Raise my empty whiskey glass to the hour that just passed. 'Cause I'm glad I spent them both with you. Feel free to plug your record, tell the people how to look you up. Feel free to share with us the words of wisdom learned with sweat and blood. But before you leave, there's just one thing I've saved right for the end.